Hi, everybody, and welcome to a Tracer Burnout Quick Hit. I'm Dan.
I'm Roger.
And normally, the Quick Hits are only on the audio platforms, Spotify, iHeart, Apple Podcasts,
etc.
But the guest that we had for this episode was a rare opportunity for us, so we figured that we would video it as well and put it on YouTube and Rumble as well.
Perfect. So, speaking of Quick Hits, former Quick Hit guest Mr. Ben Owen and his wife, Jessica, have a brand new book out, We Fight Monsters, a memoir, that they've sent us a signed copy, which was very kind of them.
And it's an advanced copy because we went through the...
we were part of the GoFundMe. So
the GoFundMe. So
that's the advance. However, it is now published and it's available. So if you're interested in buying a copy, we are looking forward to reading ours. So go to onceamerican.com, and of course you can find it on Amazon.
Yeah. And if you'd like to hear other discussions like this that are usually about 35 to 45 minutes, although this conversation did go a little bit longer, you can go on over to the Tracer Burnout feed and you'll see the ones that are marked quick hits.
That's right.
We've talked to
athletes,
Gold Star family members,
lots of nonprofits, usually in the veteran space.
Yeah. We've got a whole bunch of other good ones coming up too.
Yep.
And then, of course, while you're there, you may be tempted to look through all the primary episodes and see some of the amazing veterans that we've talked to along the way, from Vietnam to Lebanon and the Gulf War to the GWAT.
And everything in between.
Except for the Space Force.
Which does not exist, according to Dan.
Enjoy.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Tracer Burnout Quick Hit. I'm Roger.
And I'm Dan.
And we are doing things a little bit differently this time. We are in studio. We have a special in-studio guest today. The third Senior Enlisted Advisor to the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, a Command Sergeant Major more times than I could possibly count, a member of the 82nd Airborne Division Hall of Fame.
Mm-hmm. The former president of the Def Leppard Superfan Club. Author of the unwritten and unpublished book, Sir, Get My Coffee. Sir, Go Check Your Email and Stay in Your Lane, Sir. And the three-time Department of Defense super champion of the Konami Arcade Classic, Dance Dance Revolution, Mr. John Wayne Troxell.
Thank you so much for having me, gents.
Yes.
I mean, that counts as PT, right?
Yes,
Okay.
that counts. Okay. Yeah.
Awesome. So, like I said before, this is going to be a little bit different because you do a lot of amazing stuff through consulting and your book and the Hunter 7 Foundation and all sorts of stuff that you do. This is not that serious. We are not that big of fish. We appreciate your time, but everybody can go and hear you be serious everywhere else. And while we are going to talk about things that hit your career, it's not that serious.
We're going to have a little fun today.
We're going to have a little bit of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm all in.
All right.
Awesome.
So we'll start this like we start all of our normal episodes, and that's, what is your family history of military service?
So my grandfather on my mother's side was a World War II veteran. Several of my uncles on my mother's side. I have an uncle that's a Vietnam veteran of a couple tours in the Navy. And in my immediate family, my older brother joined the Army Reserves. But the inspiration for me to join wasn't so much what my family was doing. It's that I really kind of just bullied my way through high school. You know, I was a half-assed athlete, and I was more focused on beer and girls. I think you guys can identify with that.
How dare you, sir? Yes.
And I got my inspiration from guys that were a little older than me in my neighborhood that I hung around with that would leave, go to boot camp, whether that was Army, Marine Corps, or whatever, and come back, and they were a different person. They walked a little taller. They were a lot more confident and everything. And I said, I don't know what drug they're given in there, but I want some of that. And so that was kind of the inspiration for me to join, was seeing guys that came from my neighborhood that went into military service, and I saw how it changed them. So that was it right there, you know, more so than any family kind of focus on the military.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, perfect.
Cool. So it's 1989.
Mm-hmm.
Operation Just Cause. You leap head first out of a perfectly good airplane. You are streaking through the sky like a lightning bolt, supercharged with honor, fidelity, and courage. And in those brief moments before you hit the ground and hit the ground running, did you take a few moments to think, if this goes sideways, I'm never going to get to see The Little Mermaid, Steel Magnolias, Young Guns 2, which had all just come out in the last few weeks?
I don't think any of that kind of hit me. I think for all of us, we are peacetime military, and none of us thought, even though we had a platoon that was pre-positioned in Panama, we were still kind of in denial that we were escalating towards some kind of combat operation in Panama. We were too busy winning the post-flag football championship, my company, Charlie Company 373 Armor. And on that Friday, we won the championship, and Monday we got alerted. And I thought, what the hell are these doing? Are we going to go to North Airfield, South Carolina again, or Avon Park Gunnery Range, Florida, during half-day schedule? Don't these care about our families and everything? Never thinking that, we were going to actually go to combat. And they brought us in a freezing rainstorm. We marshaled, and we got to Tent City, the personnel holding area, which was on Pope Air Force Base at the time, in tents. And my platoon sergeant was a guy named Dave Freeman, and I was a tank commander, squad leader. And we got sick of just sitting around not knowing what the hell was going on. We said, screw it. We're going to go over to the brigade talk, and we're going to find out what's going on. And we were an attachment to 1st Brigade at the time, right, and the brigade that actually did the combat jump. And we go up, and there's a wire around the talk, and young Joe out there, doing his duty, and he says, "Can I see your pass?" I said, "No, get the fuck out of the way." And we just walked in like we owned the place. And that's when, right when we walked in, we heard drop altitude is going to be 500 feet. We saw staff officers laminating maps of Panama, and we looked at each other, and we know what we're doing now.
Yeah. So
we left there, went back, told our guys what was going on, and shortly after that, the chaplain stuck his head in, and anybody want a prayer? Whew, all of us were over there because we were like, top secret mission, destination unknown, don't ever know if I'm ever coming home. We're like, well, this is it.
No atheists in the foxhole, right?
Exactly. That's exactly right, and I don't care what denomination they were. This guy had a cross on his uniform. Yeah. We were like, all right, let's go see this guy. So I think it was, all right, we're going to do this. And we're like, all right, look, let's go, man. Let's do it. This is what we get paid to do. We're paratroopers. We're answering the call, and let's go. So that's kind of what it was. I would have liked to see the premiere of Young Guns 2. I'm kind of a fan, and I always use that phrase, I'm Billy the Kid, I'll make you famous, and Emilio Estevez played that part well. Yeah. So missed that, but hey, got to do a little shooting match in the meantime. So
a little bit.
Yeah.
Next, we know you and your wife love karaoke.
Yes.
So we're going to jump forward in the timeline just a little bit.
Yeah.
Operation Desert Storm.
Okay.
Did your passion for karaoke start in a tent in the deserts of Kuwait while waiting to cross the berm?
No, actually what I did then, I've always been accused of having a photographic memory. And so sitting out, we weren't even in a tent. We were on our Sheridan tanks out in the desert in blocking positions, waiting for the entire Iraqi Hammurabi division to come through. And, we're a company of tanks, 14 tanks against an entire Iraqi division.
You got them surrounded.
We got them right where we want them, exactly. Or as Billy the Kid said in, Young Guns 2, I like these odds, Right. So I used to, I had memorized movies, so I would get out and I would just act out Gunnery Sergeant Highway from Full Metal Jacket.
Gunny Highway.
Yeah, or not Gunnery Highway, Gunnery Sergeant
Arley.
That's Heartbreak Ridge is Gunny Highway.
Yeah, no, it was
Arley
Hartman.
Yeah.
Gunnery, I am Gunnery Sergeant Hartman, your senior drill instructor. From now on, you will speak only when spoken to, that kind of stuff.
The Army, rest in peace.
Yeah, yes. And that was to just, fire the troops up a little bit, get them laughing and everything. So karaoke didn't come along until a few years later. But now it is an important part of what we do now. And Friday, I get home tomorrow, and Friday night, beer, pizza, and karaoke.
Hey, it's tradition, right?
Tradition.
It's
yeah.
important.
Well, that's a good segue. As a man who's well known to enjoy a frosty pint, you spent some time in Germany as well.
Yes.
Where famous for their brewmasters and their hearty cuisine. So, how long had you been in Europe before you realized that France is a garbage country?
Well, we always heard war stories, and I didn't. I will tell you. I'm not going to step on that IED, by the way. Okay, but the French are, just a hair away from being a conscription military.
Yeah.
And so their non-commissioned officer corps is for shit, and they're an officer-led country. But when I was the sergeant major of all combat forces in Afghanistan as the ISAF Joint Command, CSM, I had the French Airborne Brigade in Kapisa Province. And you talk about some hard-fighting dudes.
Yeah.
They're paratroopers, though. I mean, they hard-fighting guys. But I realized that the will of the French leadership sucked was when the Airborne Brigade got into a serious fight in the Alachey Valley up there, and they lost 7 paratroopers, had about 20 wounded, and Sarkozy was the president. Shortly after that, he pulled France out. So France backed down to the Taliban and Al-Qaeda. And, obviously those guys were celebrating a victory that France backed down. So the political will of France is something that I'm always worried about. I love the people. I love their elite forces. Even their general purpose forces. I would go out and visit. They were called the 15-2 15-2 Brigade. They weren't as hard fighters as the Airborne Brigade, but they had some rough, steep, uneven terrain. And as a matter of fact, the cover photo for my book, Surrender or Die, where I'm kind of flashing the peace sign, I had just traversed to the top of what we called Kansdua Hill. So they were some great guys, but, they were sucking going up that hill because they were a mech brigade guys. So there were some roly-polies in there and everything. The Airborne guys were strapped. But but that's when I found out that if it comes between a hard decision where, we're in war, that, the president of France pulled his folks out. And so I thought, geez Louise. And the Airborne Brigade didn't want to go. They were crying when they were leaving because they wanted to stay and fight. They wanted to avenge 7 dudes getting killed and everything.
Yeah, of course.
So, that's what you get when, your president is a pansy, So anyways, yeah.
I mean, it is what it is.
Well, before we move
C'est la vie.
Before we move on to from Germany, let me ask an addendum question. There.
Yeah.
And this one,
Je parle un peu de français.
This one
Un petit peu.
This one is perhaps a bit more perilous.
Okay.
Every German brewery is going to be destroyed, but you can save one. Is it Bitburger or Vorsteiner?
It's Vorsteiner. Bitburger's the Bahnhof beer. And, when I was a Joe, part of the E4 Mafia over there, and you'd get on the train, we would drink Bitburger beer. Yeah. And back then, being a 20-year-old E4, man, this is good shit, But, years later, I walk into a shopette and bought Bitburger beer, and it tasted like straight ass. And I said, So Bitburger beer, you helped me out in my 20s, but you're gone. Vorsteiner.
You served your purpose, right?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Fair enough.
I mean, is the draft taste considerably different? I mean, the answer is probably yes, but...
Oh, well, I don't know that I would even waste the money on a Bitburger draft.
Fair enough.
They are on the banned list, in the Troxell kind of beer list. They are banned.
The Verboten list,
yeah,
so to speak.
Yeah. So, right ahead of French wine.
French wine.
Yeah. So.
Okay.
Yes. Acceptable.
Fair enough. Dan's on board with any Gallic expulsions as possible. So.
That's true.
Yeah.
Okay. That's true.
All right. Next, Fort Knox. I've seen the documentary Goldfinger, and so I know that at some point we had gold there. Mm-hmm. My question is not about that. Fort Knox is in proximity to a major American city that begins with the letter L.
Yep.
How do you properly pronounce that city's name?
Louisville.
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 So it's not Lowell.
Well, it depends on if you're who you're talking to, you know, on which side of the Ohio River
True.
they live on, you know. I don't know how many times I got corrected, you know, attending the Kentucky Derby, you know, or something like that, or a Louisville Sluggers baseball game or something. I call it Louisville. You know.
Louisville.
Okay. Well, before we move on from there, HRC, Human Resource Command.
Also at Fort Knox.
It's your first day. You're walking into your office or walking towards your office. What was a bigger distraction? The clippity-clop of the cloven hooves of your subordinates, the overpowering stench of sulfur and brimstone, or the general ambiance of the rending of garments?
So one thing I realized, being a combat-focused guy, when I took over the Human Resource Center of Excellence as the Army Accessions Command Sergeant Major, and all of these HRC folks, great Americans, you know, they do their job well. But the staff at the MAUD complex, you know, that massive complex that we moved into, they put umbrella stands right outside the main entrances. And they put yellow umbrellas in there. And, you know, when I was a Stryker Brigade Sergeant Major or as the First Corps CSM, I never had to tell soldiers that, you know, you don't walk around with a yellow umbrella in uniform. So here I am looking out my office window, and I see a soldier walking from the MAUD building over to where the kind of food court was in uniform with a yellow umbrella. And so I immediately, being the good command sergeant major I was, sprinted out there to rip into this sergeant first class's ass. And he was kind of just looking at the umbrella and looking at me like, you know, what are you ripping my ass for? It's the umbrella's fault that I'm out here with this thing, you know? So I learned that if you provide opportunities for people to get comfortable, and it's in a fashion that, you know, and it's a color that's not keeping with military camouflage, that in their discipline in some cases is going to go out the window and they're going to use it to stay comfortable. So I'm like, let's make these assholes uncomfortable, all right? Get rid of the freaking umbrellas. And if they want an umbrella, they can bring their own, and it can be in accordance with 670-1, you know? Yeah. You know, I don't know. You don't get free beer anywhere in the United States or the free world by walking around with a yellow umbrella when you live a warrior ethos, you know?
That is quite true.
And there's some places that you can get your ass beat for doing shit like that, you know? So I don't know, you know, I can say this. It is not in the foreseeable future that Troxell will be running around with a yellow umbrella. Even if it is maelstroming down, I'm just going to get wet and suck it up.
Well, it was supposed to rain.
Because I'd have to kick my own ass if I did that.
Over the weekend, they did actually project rain for today, and Roger, I think you're going to need that receipt to take back that umbrella.
This is awkward.
Yeah.
It's funny you say that, though, about the, you know, after being a leader for a pretty long time myself, I learned that there really is no such thing as an implied task.
Right, yes.
It's a myth.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
You know, we have this phrase, you can't make this shit up. As a matter of fact, when I was a SEAC, my XO, great Army infantryman, you know, grizzled command sergeant major with a lot of combat experience, he made these T-shirts that said YCMSU. It was, you can't make this shit up. And so underneath our OCP tops, we used to wear that T-shirt. And, you know, I remember I was the Corps CSM at JBLM, and I walk in to the shopette to get my beer for the weekend, and I see this kid in there with a T-shirt that says, I got the dick, so I make the rules. And I thought to myself,
quaint.
All right, it's about to get ugly here in a hurry. And I thought, how did this kid get out of his barracks room with this shirt on without an NCO stopping him? How did he get out of his unit area? Who else in this shopette here has seen that and is just looking the other way?
Look the other way, yeah.
And of course, again, I rip the kid's ass and I make him get out and everything. And then I'm the bully because it's not his fault. It's the shirt's fault, Right. I mean, so, yeah.
It's like, with parenthood, you learn that the use of the passive voice, right? Like, I didn't break the lamp. The lamp was broken.
Yeah, yeah. And it's kind of like when we're in combat and with the Iraqis and you're like, hey, tomorrow we are hitting the start point at 0700 for the attack. You guys are going to be ready, right?
Inshallah.
Inshallah. If God wills it, we'll be ready. No, you're going to be out here, readiness condition 1, ammo locked and loaded, pre-combat checks, inspections done, and we're going to hit the objective, and God's not going to have anything to do with it, all right?
Inshallah.
Just like their aiming skills.
Yes. Yeah. Inshallah. We tried to hit the bunker, and we ended up hitting the school. Okay.
Allah willed it.
Yes.
Well, I even had these guys when I was a battalion sergeant major in Iraq, and we're riding down the road in a convoy, and one of these guys has an ND in the back of the vehicle and shoots his buddy in the head and kills him. Oof. We get back, and we bring the unit sergeant major over there, and I was like, hey, this guy just hit this, and I thought this was going to be a big deal. And he was just like, inshallah, God willed it. So, sorry for that guy and his family, but he took one in the head,
I mean,
Now, think if we use that kind of theory in the military, what kind of military we'd be.
I don't know if Congress would be thrilled with that.
No.
Yeah.
Well, we would probably be looking for help, because we'd probably be a third world country as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. Next one, Fort Polk.
Yes.
Located in the swamp, the bayou. It is the home of the Joint Readiness Training Center. A lot of mixed feelings, love-hate relationship a lot of soldiers have with the installation and then JRTC itself. So complete the following sentence. JRTC is...
It's great because Leesville is right outside the gate, and right outside the gate of Leesville, they have a drive-through margarita shop.
It's like a brew-through.
Yeah, you just pull up, it's like a McDonald's, and you order your margaritas.
I know said margarita shop.
You've been there.
I was stationed at Fort Polk.
Man of experience right here.
Culture.
There is no drive-through anything that could make Leesville acceptable or make the Joint Readiness Training Center better.
What do you really think?
Continually improve your fighting position.
If it was free for the rest of my life, it would not make it better.
Hey, yeah, I mean, it is what it is. You make the best of where you're at and everything. Now, thankfully for me, my tour at Fort Polk was only 4 months long. And you know what? My wife and I got there, and we got the word as we were driving through the gate because I was taking over the 2nd Cavalry Regiment. I got a call saying, hey, the regiment is moving to Fort Lewis, Washington in January. This was September of 2004. And my wife and I said, we're going to set the house up like we're going to be here for 40 years instead of just 4 months. And we set the karaoke machine up too, so we could continue.
Essential equipment.
Yeah, so we could get after business. And in January, we packed everything up and off we went to Fort Lewis, So maybe I didn't gain the better appreciation of Leesville or Alexandria or places like that because I was only there 4 months. But throughout our career, Sandra and I always tried to make the best of where we were at. And I just thought it was a treat that there was a margarita bar right outside the gate. Maybe that's why, our DUI rate was a little high there when I arrived, because...
I don't think that has anything to do with it.
Well, or maybe it's the little bottles in the shopette that are right by the register so that they tell you, come on.
It's a target of opportunity.
Yeah, come on. You want to buy me.
I don't think that 1 + 1 is equaling 2.
So Dan loves Fort Polk and France. Okay, got it.
Yeah, that's not true. All right. Across your career of nearly 4 decades, you spent a considerable amount of time at Fort Bliss in the South Texas town of El Paso. With the exception of Tex-Mex, should all cross-cultural fusion cuisine be banned?
No. I think I am living proof that when you mix cultures, good things happen, and a pasty white guy from Iowa showing up in Fort Bliss with an enlistment bonus and got a 79 Buick Skylark cherry red with curb feelers and everything, and I'm looking for girls and beer. And I found them both in a hurry. And the girl I met, this young, pretty Mexican girl, she was one of 19 kids in this family. Her mom and dad had 19 kids in 23 years. You know, Pops was packing the heat, but Mom's was the queen because she was pregnant for 23 straight years almost. Yeah. And so being able to come in and cross in that culture and the scar tissue I have as a pasty white guy coming into a traditional Mexican family and you know, being accepted and everything, I thought it was a good thing.
Well, I don't think you heard the question quite correctly, because I'm not talking about cross-cultural. I'm talking about the cross-cultural fusion cuisine.
So
you got to explain that.
Yeah.
Tex-Mex is obviously a mix between, or is a fusion between Mexican and Texan cuisine.
Okay.
There are other restaurants that have become increasingly popular over the last 20 or so years, where they take cuisine from, say, Italy and Ethiopia, and they try to fuse the cuisine together.
I don't know that anybody is going out looking for, you know, that kind of stuff.
Just hipsters.
I know this. No self-respecting white guy married into a Mexican family would look to go out and get any kind of cross-culture. You know, when my wife and I go to El Paso, we're going to the authentic places. And if we're not going to the authentic places, we know in a minute that it's not authentic. Yeah, so fair. I don't know. You know, it's like no self-respecting drunk drinks near beer, you know, or drinks flavored soju. I mean, you know,
flavored soju is the devil.
Yeah, if you don't just drink straight soju like it's rubbing alcohol, then you're not a self-respecting drunk, you know.
Fair enough. So in the West Texas town of El Paso, you did fall in love with a Mexican girl.
I did.
But her name was not Felina.
No.
Okay.
Her name was Sandra.
There you go.
And I did not steal her from Jose. And I didn't have to jump out the window to get away from Jose and his boys.
You didn't get shot for your troubles.
No.
So there you go.
You know, I just had to convince her dad, who grew up in Chihuahua, Mexico, and her mom that I was a good guy and everything, even though, you know, I was a little, you know, lighter skinned colored for their taste, you know.
Good-ish.
But, you know, here we are 41 years later, and, you know, everything kind of worked out.
That's awesome.
Know?
Love to hear that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well.
Yeah. So you go ahead, Dan.
As the SEAC, or as you know, now the former SEAC, you held a position that will be, I mean, it's the pinnacle of an enlisted man in any service.
Yeah.
And you are one of a handful that, for the rest of American history, you're one of the minuscule amount of people that will ever hold that position, assuming it doesn't get canceled again. Are you willing to tell me now, on the record, or after the cameras and recorder are off the record?
Wink, wink.
Is Space Force a PSYOP?
Does it actually exist?
Yes, it actually exists. So when this initially came up, it was when John Bolton came in as a national security advisor, and he told Trump, he said, hey, you know, space is a contested operating area, and we really got to get after it. So we need to be able to man, equip, and train service members to be able to not just operate but dominate in space. We also need to get after developmental capabilities, so a space development agency along with a service component command like for Special Operations Command and things like that. And we need a combatant command that focuses on space as a geographical battle space. And initially, you know, the way the funding was going to go through the Air Force and everything, through all the analysis we did, we're like, this is probably a bad idea. And so the chairman and I go over for the Commander's Cup presentation for the Army football team. And Trump gets up there on stage, and we're sitting in the front row, and he's got the Army football team behind him, and he all of a sudden, we're going to create a space force. And, you know, there's people clapping and everything, and here the chairman is sitting next to me, and he's getting ready to go in and brief the president that this is probably not a good idea. And the chairman looks down at him and says, that's a good idea, isn't it, General? And the chairman is like, yes, sir. I was like,
on the spot.
I was like, good luck, Chairman. I'm out of here after this. You know? But when you look at it, and then, you know, all the memes came out, you know, and, you know, with Trump.
A sitcom.
Yeah, a sitcom. And, you know, Trump with his hands like he's playing an accordion, talking about Space Force, and everything. But in the end, it was a good idea. And it's something that we needed because we had atrophied in space, and the Chinese were moving out ahead of us, as well as Russia and even North Korea. So it ended up being a good idea. And now, what I love now, even the things we talked about back then. Hey, if you're weightless in space, then you don't have to worry about the overweight program.
Right.
But when you look at who the senior enlisted leader is of the Space Force now. This guy is a PT stud. He bikes about 25 to 30 miles a day, and he is all about getting after fitness and everything. So I think we're going in the right direction there, when initially we thought this isn't going to be a good idea. And I will tell you, there are some naysayers in the Air Force because the Space Force is taking funding.
It's pulling from them.
Mostly. But we're a more lethal, ready, fit force, and we're able to not just compete, but dominate in space, where we had atrophied over 20 years of counterinsurgency. So, it's good,
Really
but, you go to the Skid Row bars in Davenport, Iowa, my hometown, and you walk in there and say you're part of the Space Force, you generally don't get free beer, If you come in there and say I'm a paratrooper in the 82nd Airborne Division, or I'm in the 1st Marine Division or something like that, you might get a few free Busch lattes and everything. But if you come in there and Space Force, God bless them all. They're great Americans. I love them, but you're not going to get free beer. So maybe they've got to show themselves a little bit in the future here of how we dominate for the American people to start giving them some free Busch lattes.
Well, if there's certain bars you could probably go into and say you're a space cadet and have a yellow umbrella and get free drinks. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know that there's too many guys that I know hang out at places like this. I certainly don't,
Well, not that I don't accept your explanation and your reasoning, but I don't accept your explanation. I'm not sold.
Not sold.
I'm not sold.
The conspiracy goes deep.
The conspiracy goes deep.
All right, I have one more posting question, and then we'll move on to the evening gown round, okay?
Okay.
Joint Base Lewis McChord, formerly known as Fort Lewis. It's in Western Washington.
Mm-hmm.
You currently live in that general area, and you spend a lot of time there. How many times have you ever gone down to Evergreen State with a case of beer and just sat there and watched the locals walk by?
Never. Now, I have, I got an oasis that I go to there, and it's called Ocean Shores, Washington. A little beach resort town. It's got a casino there and everything. But the state of Washington built a Airbnb community there called Oyhut Bay.
Okay.
So now my wife and I go down there for 4 or 5 days, and in that little secluded community on the ocean, they have a steakhouse. That's great. Coffee shop, mom and pop store, gym, and a bar. And it's right across the street from where we stay. Talk about an oasis. Don't need anything else, So, so I'm not averse to sitting on the beach with a 12-pack of Rainier and just enjoying the water and everything like that. But, I don't go to downtown Seattle, to go sightseeing anymore because of the kind of people that inhabit downtown Seattle under the bridges.
Yes.
And I don't, go to Evergreen Park just to see and hang out with the locals.
It is interesting.
It is. The first thing they want to ask me is, what do you support the Palestinian people? And, I had, funny thing about that is I had a speaking engagement in Georgetown University about 1.5 years ago, right after the invasion into Israel and the fight in Gaza and everything. And I ran into these protesters, chubby little mask with a green hair and a kafaya scarf on and everything. And they're asking me, what do you think is going to happen in Gaza? I said, well, the Israelis are going to make it a parking lot. Whether you like it or not, you attacked them, and this isn't going to be over until, the tar is down and they've paved Gaza into a parking lot, and Israeli vehicles are parked there. So they didn't like that answer, but...
You can also ask them, too, before you answer, show me where Gaza is on this map. And then I will answer your question.
Yeah. And some of them were wearing... Tunisian scarves or Jordanian scarves supporting Palestine. Yeah,
they're all basically the same.
Yeah. So people that are sensitive about, culture and things like that, wearing the wrong scarf to show support and everything, but they want to look at guys like me and say I'm the guy that has a problem, and they're trying to eliminate me, and I'm like, whatever,
God bless them.
Yeah, just don't come through my backyard because there's plenty of Second Amendment alive and well
Fair
in
enough.
the Troxell household, lethal and non-lethal. So
We call those effects.
And then and then the other effects, I can bake cookies too. So if I need to win their hearts as they come in,
Delicious effects.
yes, then I can bake cookies and transform them that way too. So. Whatever they need, I think they would prefer that as opposed to an AR-15 or a Mossberg 500 with, 2.75 Magnum or anything like that.
Good shot group.
Yeah.
That's good.
Do you drive a Tesla just to instigate and
No.
put all your options on the table?
I've never been a fan of Tesla, even when it was a far left kind of vehicle. Now it's a far right kind of vehicle, even though far left people drive it and they like to key it and everything.
Yeah.
I've just never been a fan of it, And so I'm good with my American-made vehicles, and our driveway at our house kind of looks like the Secret Service motor pool because we got all black vehicles that are all blacked out and everything, and I think that's a good thing because people look at us and think that we're cops, So so they generally leave us alone. So,
Also effects.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
We wrap every of our episodes with what we call the free fire area.
Okay.
Which is just one of us will be on the hot seat. So one will have a prepared question or prompt, and we'll ask each other, and then we just kind of go back and forth. So what we've done is compiled some of our past free fire area questions to ourselves, and we're going to deliver them to you in kind of a lightning round style format. So don't put too much thought into these. We're gonna blow through some of these. So Dan, you want the honors for the first?
Sure. What are you reading now?
I am reading Walking Tall, Buford Pusser's book that his daughter wrote about him. If you remember Buford Pusser, he was a Marine, and he was a pro wrestler, and he went back down to McNairy County down in Tennessee, and there was a lot of criminal activity going on, and he ran for sheriff. He became sheriff, and he cleaned the place up big time. Cost his wife his life and everything, or her life, and he got severely wounded and maybe caused him an early death, but he was a genuine badass, and he didn't put up with any shit. And then when the crooked mayor was not supporting him, he read in the law book that he is responsible as the sheriff to give the mayor his office, so he put his office in the shit house. And and so I thought, hey, what a way to go. So, yeah, Walking Tall is what
he
I'm...
read his doctrine.
Yes, he did. Yeah.
Perfect. What is the best episode of The Simpsons?
I don't watch The Simpsons.
Okay.
But if I do, it's anything where Homer is kind of disappearing into the bushes. When Mattis became the Secretary of Defense.
Classic.
And we had this running joke on my staff that because Mattis had this rule, we're going to be a fit force, and he used this phrase, "no more fatties," and he wanted to get rid of people that were overweight and everything. And every time I would go anywhere with Mattis, and there would be a fat guy standing around, that fat guy would kind of do the Homer Simpson and disappear into the bushes. So
that's basically that was from the movie Terminator 2.
Yeah.
For all the movie nerds.
Yeah.
That was the T-2000 kind of like congealing. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. An asteroid is headed to destroy Earth, and Bruce Willis and Steve Buscemi and all those guys, they're not going to save us.
Ben Affleck, yep.
They're not going to save us. You have about 4 hours for your last meal on Earth. What are you eating?
Farrelly's Pizza with beer, and then I'm going to go to McDonald's and get a double quarter pounder with cheese value meal with a milkshake, and then I'm going to leave there and I'm going to go to Ruby Tuesdays, and I'm going to get a colossal burger and a chocolate tall cake to finish it all off, and then a few shots of soju to get me ready.
Flavored soju, got it.
No flavored soju. My wife drinks that. I just couldn't face my Korean counterparts by saying I drink flavored soju because those guys, Ajima, 80 years old, drinking straight dang rubbing alcohol. I wasn't gonna, bow down to that. So that's kind of what I would do. I would go out in a way that it would numb the pain a little bit. You know what I mean?
When I would go, when my section, when we were in Korea up in 2ID, we would have somebody on the team that'd have to be the designated drinker to go drink with the Korean military guys.
Yeah.
So we have to alternate. We can't all do it. Somebody's got to be responsible. And
Well, partnering's supposed to hurt, and to build close relationships. Yeah. So you got to be, we go together in this stuff, But I always told myself, in 5 years of combat, that I only had 2 requests. I didn't ask, or pray to God that I would make it out alive. Don't get me wrong; we all wanted to get out alive. But I said, if I have to go, I want it to be quick, and I want to see it coming. That's it. So with an asteroid, I know it's coming and everything, and I just want to get myself into a position where I'm numbed up, I face it down, and then it's over like that,
Fair enough.
Perfect. Who is the best and worst James Bond?
Again, I'm not a James Bond fan kind of stuff. As far as actor, I think the best James Bond is who I grew up on, Roger Moore. And I think the worst one was Pierce Brosnan. After seeing him in that movie 9 Months, and how much of a pussy he was, and I thought, okay, this guy's supposed to be James Bond.
I forgot.
He's got range.
He's
got range.
Well, he's a great actor, He's got range, too, because, he's hanging out, picking up prostitutes, too, and getting arrested for it.
As one does.
Yeah, I mean, hey, to each his own, okay? But, if you're getting your ass beat in a toy store by Tom Arnold, you kind of lose credibility on the superhero kind of 007 kind of thing,
Fair enough.
You can give one president, JFK and before. You can give them a nickname, flattering or unflattering, that will last from now and forever. Who is it, and what is the nickname?
I think it would be Woodrow Wilson, and it would be Otis, because he was known to imbibe a lot, and some of the decisions he made pre-presidency as the governor of New Jersey were under the influence of a quart of brandy and everything. So, and Otis is the nickname off of, Otis the Town Drunk on the series Andy Griffith, where Otis would come in with his imaginary dog Spot. And, when he had tied one on, he would just go in and grab a cell and chill out till he sobered up, and then they'd let him out and everything. So,
Otis.
God bless Woodrow Wilson and his family, but he was the Otis, And, look, some of our greatest leaders in the history of the world were drunks. Look at Winston Churchill. He was a quart of brandy guy a day.
Before breakfast.
Before breakfast, yeah. And, he did okay, I think, So, he was known to carry a Tommy gun with him and a cigar, too. And I think I even got a T-shirt like that. So when I feel like, my old self and want to think I'm a badass, I'll throw on a Winston Churchill T-shirt. Yeah. I don't go to Evergreen Park with it, and certainly not into downtown Seattle, okay? Of course not. Because the green hairs will be on my ass.
Your yellow umbrella will protect you.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, that's on me. Pumpkin spice. Why?
One of the best soldiers I ever served with, who is one of the most talented individuals, former UFC Ultimate Fighter champion for season 14. He's an elite special operator now, a career combat infantryman. His name is Colton Smith. He worked for me for 2 years when I was the SEAC, and we are still close friends today. He's an entrepreneur now. He owns BJJ Gyms. He's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt of, nth degree and everything.
14 degrees.
Yeah, and one of the hardest guys on the planet, but he is a pumpkin spice guy. So I think we all have our vices, and I'm not a fan of pumpkin spice. Again, if I went back to Davenport, Iowa, into the Skid Row bars there, and talked to the guys that have been sitting in those bars for 40 years, the NASCAR guys with the sleeveless T-shirts and 3 teeth in their mouth, and said, hey, I'm all about pumpkin spice, they'd probably rearrange my dental work for me. So I kind of stay away from that kind of stuff.
Good call.
Yeah.
What is the most overrated Thanksgiving dish?
Oh, cranberry sauce.
Oh,
cranberry
vindication!
Sauce. Yeah, absolutely.
You're killing me.
Yeah. I don't know that, if I was in an enemy POW camp and they were about to stick slivers of wood up under my fingernails, or hook up jumper cables to my frickin' C&B, that I would eat cranberry sauce, and if they said, hey, if you eat this cranberry sauce, we won't do this to you, that would be a hard choice, But I do treasure my private parts and everything, so maybe I would eat it. But that is the only time I would eat that stuff. I never eat it on Thanksgiving.
Good man.
Yes.
That's a good American. Right?
I feel chastised. Okay. What are the proper ingredients to a martini?
Well, to somebody that uses a yellow umbrella martini or a John Wayne Troxell martini. A John Wayne Troxell martini, having lived the Mexican experience for a few years, we have this thing we call a michelada, and it's a beer, and we put tomato juice in it. And then my wife's oldest brother, 3 tours in Vietnam, God rest his soul, he taught me we put 15 little drops of hot sauce in it, Tabasco sauce, and then rim it with salt, and I put ice in it, and that was my kind of martini. Now, that's a good way to get high blood pressure and, and the Grim Reaper and coming to see you early, but
it's got
damn, it was
juice.
good shit. Yeah.
It's got tomato
It's
juice.
healthy.
Yeah.
It's fruit juice.
Yeah.
And hot sauce, it's a good thermogenic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you're a bonfire the next day, but damn, they were good, and we had fun doing it. And then we got to the point where my middle son, Michael, who's a world-class chef now and works at a prominent restaurant in Arizona, and is a bartender too, boy, he can make the best of those things. And man, they were good, So my brother and I sitting around on a Sunday watching football, having about 10 or 12 of those things. Those are the martinis,
Nice.
the best martinis. And now people will look at me and say, that's not a martini. Well, that's a Troxell martini.
Fair enough.
That is an acceptable answer.
Fair enough.
Yes.
I agree. Why is Die Hard the best Christmas movie?
I think it's because of, I think we all kind of live vicariously through Bruce Willis' character in there, a guy that doesn't put up with shit and in the worst of times, like in combat, we still have that sense of humor and everything. And, when he tells the lady, when she's like, oh, you got to use this other line, does it sound like I'm ordering a pizza, lady, when he's in this middle of this chaos and everything, and then you take what he was going through there at Nakatomi Tower and what was going on there and everything, and then you throw the Christmas kind of atmosphere in it. It just, it just made it a great movie. So I have to agree, it's one of the best Christmas movies I've ever watched. And, and then some, Al, the cop there, certain times in my life I've lived like through him, like 2 a.m. I've gone into a convenience store and bought a dozen Twinkies, and brought them out and ate them, even though I wasn't a cop or anything. And that's kind of the stereotype of cops. I'm known to go to a convenience store and get a lot of Little Debbie snack cakes or Hostess snack cakes and just wolf them down.
But he would not eat them in front of General Mattis.
No, absolutely not. Well, with Mattis, if you weren't 175 pounds, all right, you were going to get on the scale. To the point, Mattis even came to me one day and he says, hey, SEAC, what are we going to do about all these fatties? And I said, well, Mr. Secretary, let's line them all up in the E-ring of the Pentagon. We'll put a scale right outside your office, put them on the scale. And if they're overweight, then we'll tell them you got 60 days to get in battery or we're going to get rid of you, And he said, that's a great idea. Now, of course, his lawyers came up to me, taking it all seriously. Hey, he can't do that. He doesn't have I said, we were just joking, It was a joke and everything. So, yeah, we never ate cheeseburgers or snack cakes around Mattis. It was protein bars and in fruit and stuff like that.
Fair enough.
Okay. Got another one?
Let's do a couple more here. We're running out of time here. What is the best sports movie?
The best sports movie, I would have to go with the original Longest Yard.
Burt Reynolds, right?
Burt Reynolds and those 1960s NFL players that were in it, Joe Cap and Sonny Six Killer and guys like that. It was just awesome. In my opinion, it was more authentic than the one with Adam Sandler and everything.
Was Jim Brown in the original? Because the 60s is when he started getting into movies.
No, he wasn't in that movie.
Yeah.
I don't remember.
Well, Jim Brown, in my opinion, the greatest running back ever,
The guy intentionally never ran out of bounds.
Yes. Yeah.
Like he had choice names for running backs
One of the
today.
few running backs
That's wild.
that would not run out of bounds when Butkus was in high pursuit.
Mm-hmm.
And when those two guys hit, it was like two worlds colliding and everything.
1,000 yards rushing every single season that he played.
Think of this.
Every season.
He rushed for 1,800 yards in 12 games, which is about 163 yards a game, somewhere in there. O.J. Simpson, when he had 2,003 yards before he started slicing and dicing and everything,
Allegedly.
in 14 games, allegedly, only 143 yards a game. So Jim Brown was just unstoppable, And 8 years in the NFL, 8 Pro Bowls.
Yeah.
And he did it in Cleveland.
Yes. Now, they were a good team back then, winning championships, 1 or 2, but, but now.
That was before the merger. So,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Anytime that you hear music for the rest of your life, it can only be one genre. Not a specific song or a specific band, but one general genre. Anytime you hear music, in the elevator, at a bar, whatever it is, when you're waiting on hold on the phone,
Yes.
it'll always be this genre of music. What genre?
Punk.
is it? Punk?
Got to be punk. Oh, yeah.
70s punk or 90s punk?
Any of them.
Okay.
And then how punk and pop have kind of crossed, the Blink-182s, Green Day, folks like that. And my go-to karaoke song is All the Small Things by Blink-182. But I can also do some, Green Day. I can also do The Killers. I can also do Red Hot Chili Peppers. So I kind of stay with that. I don't do a lot of country. I don't do a lot of, straight pop or stuff like that. But damn, if Blink-182 cranks up, keep a mic away from me because it's on. And it's about having fun, That's what people don't understand about karaoke. It's a bunch of people that shouldn't be drinking listen to a bunch of people that shouldn't be singing, all right?
That sounds about
but
right.
we are drinking, and so we are going to sing. So let's have a blast and stop thinking it's American Idol,
That is the best explanation of why karaoke exists that
Yes.
I've ever heard.
Yeah,
Well said.
yeah. And the more beer you drink or the more soju you drink, all of a sudden you feel like you're an American Idol.
The better you're singing.
Yes, and so yeah, so it's definitely punk.
Okay. Last free fire question. Which locale has the best barbecue?
State, town, whatever. Oh, Texas, by far, and you've got to go to Central Texas, I think. Austin, Dallas. Maybe you can go down to San Antonio. They got some good stuff too. But the further south you go, the more you get the Tex-Mex and stuff like that. But I think Texas has the best, in my opinion. And even El Paso, they've got some good barbecue places too. But I don't find a lot of great barbecue places up in the Pacific Northwest.
Correct.
Unless it's fusion.
Great Asian
it could be
fusion.
fusion.
Canadian,
yes.
Mexican fusion.
Yeah. But if I'm, this fusion thing you're talking about, if I'm going to go out and I want bulgogi from Korean, I don't want it to have an Italian twist to it or a French twist to it.
With oregano.
Yeah. I just want bulgogi. I want to be able to cook it myself, like some of the Korean restaurants. I want soju with it. I want some Korean beer with it and everything. And I want to be able to do my thing. Last night I went to an Italian restaurant, with a good friend of mine, and all I wanted was veal parmesan. I didn't need any kind of barbecue with it or anything like that. I'm going for one thing. So maybe I'm linear in my approach to my eating, but I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing.
Fair enough.
Okay.
Okay. Well, let's
Awesome.
wind this down.
Yeah.
Dan
But
and
think
I-
of this.
Yeah.
Think of the
Yeah.
think of the discourse between Japan and South Korea from the Korean War when Japanese women were brought over to be comfort women for Koreans and everything. And now if you take a Korean cell phone into Japan and vice versa, the cell phone coverage is about as close as the diplomatic relations are. But think if you mix Japanese and Korean food, who would go and get that? Americans like us would eat it.
Yeah, probably American GIs,
you wouldn't catch a lot of Koreans or Japanese eating it, having spent a lot of time in that region of the world and with those cultures.
Most of East Asia and a big chunk of Southeast Asia are still not fans of the Japanese.
Yeah.
So if right across the street from your house they opened a Mongolian Norwegian barbecue or sandwich shop, you wouldn't be frequenting?
I would go over there for a drink, and it'd have to be, is it a Norwegian beer, a Mongolian beer, or whatever? But no, I probably wouldn't be chowing down there.
It would be called Genghis Ericsson.
Yeah.
All right, we're going off the rails here.
We are indeed.
Okay, couple questions.
It will be expensive. Norway being a socialist country, it's like you go into a restaurant there. I went there as a SEAC, and it's like $11 for a beer.
It's oil money.
Yeah, absolutely. So it would be expensive. I can tell you that because the Norwegians got to pay the king back in Norway and everything. So
okay, semi-serious question just to kind of wind this down. So just kind of a generic leadership style question. What advice do you have for a young American, we'll say high school, maybe college aged, who's got their whole future ahead of them and they're just trying to figure out what they want to do with their life? What would you say to them?
They got to develop a personal vision that comes with a disciplined approach to life, and they have to know what they want to do. Because I talk to a lot of young Americans now, and I say, all right, what are your goals? What are you looking to do? Well, I'm just kind of doing this and that. Maybe that's why you see some of these youngsters that are sleeping in green tents in quads on college campuses protesting for something that they truly don't understand because their vision has been tainted by something that they can't influence. I tell young people all the time, don't waste your energy on something that you can't change. Yeah, you can go out in the street and protest against the Israelis or whatever it is, but you're not going to change anything, and it's not going to directly affect you. So have vision on where you want to go, what you want to do with your life, where you're at now, what are the things you need to do, the steps to get there, and what are those goals? And then be purposeful in your approach. And then have a positive outlook. We all know adversity is going to hit us, bad shit's going to happen to us and everything, but your perception of how to deal with that bad stuff will always drive what your future looks like. So I talk about vision, purpose, and positivity. Have vision on what you want to do with your life. Be purposeful in your approach. Don't move in low transfer or stand around waiting for somebody to tell you what to do and everything. Go out and get after life, and then be positive, And I see too many youngsters especially wasting energy and time. A kid graduates from college, and because they're protesting something, they rip up their diploma. How is that helping you, and how is that helping your future by throwing it in the trash can? Okay, now again, some of those people are living in their parents' basement and pissing soy and everything, and probably have had a pampered life. But in the end, they're not doing themselves any good, and they're certainly not doing this nation any good. So have vision, know where you're at, where you want to go, how you're going to get there, be purposeful, and then have a positive outlook on life and stop being so angry. Yeah. Why so mad? Don't waste your energy on something you can't control.
They want something to believe in.
Yeah.
Their head is in the right place, and it's just misplaced on what it is that they're settling.
Well, they're looking for identity.
Yep.
And they find that identity in being part of something that they think is pushing back against the man or the system or whatever it is. And if your self-worth is standing on the side of the road protesting something, God bless you. You live in the United States of America, and you certainly have the right to do it. But in the end, you ain't helping anybody, okay?
Fair enough.
And you're certainly not helping yourself because you're not being productive in anything.
Yeah.
If you could go back,
yes,
would you do it all again? From being a directionless, high school half-asser,
yeah,
to all the way to the SEAC.
Absolutely. And here's why I would do it all over again. When I joined the military, no purpose, motivation, direction. I get stationed in El Paso. I meet this beautiful young Mexican girl and fall in love, and we get married. And because of her family values, growing up in abject poverty, and not having a lot in me from a lower middle class family in Iowa, we were driven to be successful. And as we built our family with our children through the military, we were on this journey together. And she was with me, and she's been with me this whole ride all the way to the top. And then after I retired, setting goals to start my own consulting company, to focus on the three things that I focus on, which is paying it forward to the men and women in the military, to giving back to my fellow veterans, and making life comfortable in my family, and surround all of that by enjoying the ride. We have changed, my wife and I, the economic trajectory of our family to where now we can provide opportunities to our grandchildren that we didn't have because of this life together in the military, and how that was a springboard for what we're doing now. So if I had to change anything along the way, I would probably change my behavior a little bit, because there was a couple times she had to pull me out of something because I was acting stupid, a bar fight or doing something. You know, a man's going to be a man, and somebody tests his manhood in a bar, nothing like a beer mug to the side of the head, to get that person in line.
I wouldn't know anything about
Ask
that.
me how I know.
Yeah. So I would do it all over again, because although it's been over 40 years, I'm in a position now where I can get after those things that I'm focused on. And it was all because of being married to this beautiful woman and being together with her for over 41 years now. So, and having a great career of 38 years that springboarded me into the corporate world where I'm at now. So, and I'm not done yet. I got this phrase. I stole it from one of my favorite movies, The Shawshank Redemption. Morgan Freeman, get busy living or get busy dying. And we're still on the road to getting busy living. And we're setting goals for ourselves, for our family and everything, and the direction we want to go. And we're going to keep getting after it. So we're not going to be sitting on the back porch, bad-mouthing our country or the military or anybody else. We're going to keep moving forward and getting after it, because we're having a blast along the way.
Awesome.
I have a line from The Shawshank Redemption that I like to use on people as well, but it's, how can you be so obtuse?
Well played, sir. Well played.
Well, John, thank you so much.
Andy got cast down with the sodomites after that. So
this has been awesome.
Oh, thank you guys so much. I appreciate what you're doing. I appreciate the work you do. And what I love about it is, and you guys brought this up at the beginning, I do so many podcasts that focus on getting after the seriousness of life. It's great to sit down with two fellow warriors and just, cut up for an hour. So thanks for having me. Thanks for having me in your house, okay? Yeah, the Sergeant Major in me says there's some cigarette butts out there you need to get policed up. But
that grass is freshly cut, I will have you know. You have nothing to complain about there.
Oh, so you prepared for the Sergeant Major coming over to checking the length of your grass.
Of course.
But he does have sideburns.
Yes.
I don't have to follow that regulation anymore.
No, thanks, guys.
Perfect.
I appreciate it.
Thanks.
Nine of the 10 aircraft that presented themselves. This guy couldn't miss. So the next day we cocked the battle, and they sent me this guy that was lean and mean. LBE was sharp. Vehicle was sharp.
Looked awesome.
He was awesome. He got up there and he couldn't hit a thing. And so then afterwards at the AAR, the observer controller was saying, well, if you had to do it all over again, First Sergeant, what would you like? I said, send me that fat guy back, because he was a killer. He looked like he smelled like but that guy could shoot. And I said, send him back to me. I don't need the pretty guys.